For decades, the global economy was built on a single assumption: that efficiency mattered more than resilience. Supply chains were optimized to move faster, cheaper, and leaner with little room for disruption. That system worked until it didn't. In a world increasingly shaped by shocks, bottlenecks, and strategic uncertainty, reliability has quietly become more valuable than speed. Against this backdrop, two countries far from the world's main pressure points have begun positioning themselves not as dominant players, but as stabilizers. Canada and Australia are not racing to control global trade. Instead, they are building something far subtler: an economic architecture designed to function when others fail. This is the story of why the world's most dependable economies may soon become its most indispensable ones. Welcome to Geo Capitalist, where we examine how power is built quietly, through systems, resources, and long-term strategy rather than headlines. Today's analysis explores why Canada and Australia are building what can be described as the world's backup economy, and how this deliberate shift toward resilience is reshaping the way capital, trust, and supply chains operate globally. For much of the modern era, global economic success was measured by efficiency. The faster goods moved, the lower inventories could be kept, and the tighter margins became, the more competitive an economy appeared. This model rewarded speed and scale, but it quietly sacrificed redundancy. When systems were stretched to their limits, there was little capacity to absorb shocks. Over time, this created a fragile equilibrium, one that appeared stable until stress-tested. As disruptions accumulated, governments and investors began reassessing what economic strength truly meant. Resilience emerged not as a luxury, but as a necessity. Redundancy, once dismissed as inefficiency, started to look like insurance. Backup capacity became strategic infrastructure rather than wasted potential. In this new framework, economies are valued not just for how well they perform in ideal conditions, but for how reliably they operate when conditions deteriorate. Canada and Australia entered this shift with a structural advantage. Their economic models were never built solely for maximum throughput. Instead, they evolved around stability, institutional continuity, and long planning horizons. What once seemed conservative now appears prescient. The global economy is no longer optimizing for perfection. It is optimizing for survival. And in that environment, reliability has become a form of power. Geography has always shaped economic destiny, but its role is changing. In an interconnected world, proximity once meant advantage: shorter routes, faster delivery, tighter integration. Today, proximity also carries risk. Congested choke points, dense trade corridors, and politically sensitive regions amplify vulnerability during periods of stress. Distance, by contrast, can act as insulation. Canada and Australia occupy geographic positions that reduce exposure to many of the world's most volatile intersections. Their borders are secure, their access points are manageable, and their territories provide strategic depth. This distance is not isolation, it is optionality. It allows trade routes to be diversified rather than concentrated, and supply chains to be rerouted rather than frozen. Geography also limits the speed at which external shocks propagate internally. Disruptions elsewhere do not immediately cascade through domestic systems. For investors and partners, this translates into predictability. Geographic insulation lowers systemic risk without requiring isolation from global markets. Canada's position near major consumer economies, combined with Australia's reach into the Indo-Pacific, creates complementary buffers on opposite sides of the global map. Together, they provide a form of spatial redundancy, one that is increasingly valued in an era where geographic exposure can determine economic outcomes. Resource wealth alone does not create stability. What matters is how that wealth is distributed, managed, and integrated into broader systems. Canada and Australia share a defining characteristic. Their critical resources are not concentrated in a single region or controlled through narrow corridors. Energy, minerals, food production, and water security are spread across vast territories, reducing the likelihood that a single disruption can cripple output. This decentralization limits single-point failure. It also allows production to scale or pause without destabilizing entire value chains. In contrast to highly centralized producers, both countries can adapt supply without collapsing capacity. This flexibility becomes crucial when markets fluctuate or logistics are disrupted. Equally important is governance. Resource extraction operates within transparent legal frameworks, predictable regulation, and long-term planning horizons. That consistency reduces uncertainty for partners who depend on steady supply rather than maximum volume. Over time, reliability becomes more valuable than abundance. Canada's growing focus on processing and value-added capacity further reinforces this dynamic, moving the economy from supplier to stabilizer. Australia's upstream scale complements this approach, creating layered resilience across production stages. Together, they form a system designed not to dominate markets, but to keep them functioning. Capital is sensitive to risk, and in uncertain environments, it becomes conservative. When volatility rises, investors prioritize clarity over yield and continuity over speed. This is where institutional trust becomes decisive. Canada and Australia offer something increasingly scarce: legal certainty. Contracts are enforced, regulations are transparent, and policy shifts tend to be incremental rather than abrupt. Courts function independently, and political transitions rarely disrupt economic commitments. These qualities do not generate dramatic headlines, but they quietly shape capital flows. Pension funds, sovereign investors, and long-term asset managers seek environments where assumptions remain valid over decades. In such contexts, stability itself becomes a return. Canada's financial infrastructure, regulatory credibility, and proximity to global markets amplify this effect. Australia's long record of institutional continuity reinforces it. Together, they attract capital, not because of short-term opportunity, but because of long-term confidence. This creates a feedback loop. As capital accumulates in stable systems, those systems gain further resilience. Investment reinforces reliability, and reliability attracts further investment. Over time, this dynamic transforms trust into economic gravity. In a fragmented global economy, that gravity becomes a strategic asset. The concept of a backup economy is often misunderstood. It is not about replacing existing economic powers or reshaping global hierarchies. Canada and Australia are not attempting to displace manufacturing hubs, consumer markets, or financial centers. Instead, they are positioning themselves as complements, systems that support continuity rather than competition. Backup capacity only reveals its value when primary systems are strained. It operates quietly in the background, absorbing pressure rather than generating confrontation. This distinction matters. By avoiding overt rivalry, both countries reduce geopolitical friction and maintain broad compatibility with diverse partners. Their role is stabilizing rather than directional. They provide optionality without forcing alignment. This neutrality increases trust and lowers resistance. Markets do not perceive redundancy as a threat. They perceive it as reassurance. Canada's approach reflects this philosophy. Rather than pursuing dominance, it emphasizes integration, reliability, and long-term partnerships. Australia mirrors this logic upstream. Together, they create resilience without provoking backlash. In a world where overt economic power increasingly triggers countermeasures, quiet reliability becomes the more sustainable strategy. The backup economy does not seek attention. It seeks relevance when stability is most needed. Viewed individually, trade agreements, investment flows, and infrastructure projects can appear disconnected. When viewed together, a pattern emerges. Redundancy is being designed intentionally across multiple layers: production, logistics, finance, and governance. Multiple routes reduce dependency on single corridors. Multiple suppliers reduce exposure to localized disruption. Multiple processing paths reduce bottlenecks. Canada and Australia are not building parallel systems, they are building overlapping ones. This overlap is what creates resilience. When one pathway slows, another compensates. When one market tightens, another absorbs demand. The system does not break, it flexes. This approach reflects engineering logic rather than political ambition. Systems designed for endurance prioritize adaptability over optimization. They sacrifice marginal efficiency to gain survivability. Over time, this design philosophy compounds. Each layer reinforces the next, creating an ecosystem that can absorb shocks without losing coherence. Canada's growing role in midstream processing and logistics strengthens this architecture. Australia's upstream scale anchors it. Together, they form a distributed system that does not rely on any single point to function. That is the essence of a backup economy, not redundancy for its own sake, but resilience by design. Within this partnership, Canada's position evolves steadily. Proximity to major consumer markets, advanced financial systems, and expanding processing capacity allow Canada to capture increasing value as resilience becomes more important. As supply chains shift from extraction-centric to system-centric, midstream and coordination roles grow in significance. Canada is well positioned to fill those roles. Its infrastructure connects production to consumption, while its regulatory environment supports long-term planning. Over time, this enables Canada to move beyond supplier status into system manager. Australia's scale remains essential upstream, but Canada's integration capacity becomes the stabilizing core. This dynamic does not diminish Australia's role, it complements it. Together, they form a layered structure where each country reinforces the other's strengths. Canada benefits disproportionately because resilience tends to concentrate value where coordination occurs. As global markets price stability more highly, economies that enable continuity gain leverage. Canada's advantage is not speed or scale. It is reliability combined with access. In a volatile world, that combination becomes increasingly valuable. In geopolitics and economics alike, attention often gravitates toward the dramatic. Crises, confrontations, and rapid shifts dominate discourse, yet the most consequential systems are often the least visible. Canada and Australia are building an economic model that does not rely on spectacle. It relies on endurance. The backup economy is not designed to impress in moments of calm. It proves its worth during moments of stress. Its strength lies in continuity, predictability, and the ability to function when others cannot. In an era defined by uncertainty, these qualities are increasingly scarce. As global systems fragment, the value of stability rises. Economies capable of absorbing shocks without destabilizing partners become indispensable. Canada and Australia are positioning themselves precisely in that role. They are not racing ahead of the global economy, they are standing ready behind it. Over time, this quiet readiness may become one of the most powerful economic assets of the coming decades. The future may not belong to the fastest systems, but to the ones that keep working. If you value clear analysis of how economic power is built through systems rather than spectacle, I invite you to watch the next video, subscribe to Geo Capitalist. Because in a world where volatility is becoming the norm, the countries that endure quietly may shape the future more than those that move loudly. Thank you for being here. See you in the next video.